your biggest, I should not be laughing moment? Story 1. A little girl in my hometown had cancer, and there were massive fundraisers for her for years. The day she died, my coworker said, "I want my money back," and I laughed so hard, I almost lost my job. Story 2. My grandpa had been on hospice care for about a month and was in his house. We were having a family party there, and it was apparent that he wasn't going to make it much longer. So, with everyone gathered around him, my grandma whispered, "It's okay. You can go to him." He slowly passed away minutes later. My whole family was kind of standing around, processing what just happened when my little cousin, about 5 years old, says we still get to eat cake, right? Edit: yes, we did eat that cake like Bruce Bogtrotter. Story 3. When I was 10, my 8-year-old cousin thought he'd teach me how to control dogs. So he took a stick and started whipping his 2 Australian cattle dogs with impunity. Soon, the 2 dogs started to attack him, and as he began crying and screaming, I couldn't stop laughing. I crawled up on top of a car and laughed until I cried. His mom called me a monster, but I to this day believe it was he who the monster be. Story 4. My husband and I went to the wedding of one of his co-workers. Before the ceremony, a teenage girl got up to sing a song. I don't remember which one, probably Wind Beneath My Wings or something, and it was real bad. Everyone was standing and watching this, and I noticed my husband fidgeting next to me. He's putting his hands in his pockets and then taking them out and crossing them over his chest. I look over, and he whispers to me. I don't know what to do with my hands. It was my breaking point. Everything happening was so awkward, and I suddenly couldn't stop laughing. I felt horrible, but I couldn't help it. Story 5. This is my father's story. He was kneeling in the front row with his brother-in-law at said brother-in-law's father's funeral. My dad noticed that his father had a black eye and quietly asked him about it. He responded he wouldn't get in a box. He said they were both crying, trying to hold in the laughter. Edit: thank for the upvotes. I needed some karma on my new account to bypass the post-frequency limit. Much appreciated. Story 6. I was at a wake for a friend's grandmother. Out of nowhere, I hear someone across the hall yell, "Who the pooped in a VCR player?" I lost it. I have no idea if someone actually did, or if it was a funeral home worker or what, but the randomness of it made me laugh uncontrollably for a solid couple of minutes. I was surprised I was the only one. Everyone else was talking softly or crying. I was laughing loudly and uncontrollably. Story 7. I took a speech class my freshman year of college. The final was a 10-minute presentation about anything you had interest in. There were a lot of foreign students in the class, and this Asian girl gave her speech on ice cream. I kid you not, her accent turned ice cream into cream, as cliche as could be, and I had to keep my cool for the whole presentation. Vanilla cream, Neapolitan cream, cream bars. Even the professor was having a hard time not laughing. Story 8. A couple of years ago, my father passed away unexpectedly at the age of 50. He died at home and was not able to be revived from paramedics. Due to formality, he had to be taken to the hospital via ambulance, and the family was able to say goodbyes, spend time with him before the funeral home came. I will never forget growing up, my dad used to joke around and say, "Always make sure you put on clean underwear and matching socks before you walk out the door. You never know if you'll be hit by a bus, and you don't want people to see your dirty gitch." I think it was more a way to give us about putting on clean clothes. Long story short, when I seen him lying on that table in a state of shock, I lifted up the sheet over him and peeked at his feet. I started to laugh hysterically. The rest of the family just stared, waiting for some reply. I said he wore clean socks, but I'm not checking his underwear. My sister was the only one who got the joke, and she too started laughing. In my mind, I knew my dad would have got a kick out of it. Story 9. When I saw Titanic in the theater with my first girlfriend, I burst out laughing at the end. There's this guy who hits the rail and bounces into the water in a very comedic way, complete with sound effects, or at least that's how I remember it. I admit the BONG may not have actually been there. Story 10. When my son was 3, we asked him what he wanted to be for Halloween. "I want to be a pirate," he said. So we got a tri-corner hat and a striped shirt and an eye patch and a vest, and got him all dressed up and put him in front of a mirror. He looked at his reflection and frowned. "This isn't what the pirates wear." My wife and I looked at each other. "Yes, sweetie, they do," said my wife. "Not when they're flying the airplanes," he said. "Pilots, so." Story 11. My husband and I got news that his Uncle Ted had died. My husband said, "Ted's dead, baby. Ted's dead." I went into convulsions with laughter. I don't know what was more inappropriate, me laughing or him quoting from Pulp Fiction. Story 12. I'm a bust-a-girl. My cousin's baby boy, who was breastfed, kept reaching for my chest during the visitation at my grandmother's funeral. At one point, he stared directly at looked at his mother, and grinned. We were all dying. Story 13. My friend got his phone stolen. What made me laugh the most was that when he lost his phone, he casually said, "Oh, my phone," but then puts his face into his hands. "OH, my case. MY scratch-proof case." I nearly died of laughing. Story 14. At a funeral, the catered food was exceptionally tasty. My dad leans over and says, "Man, he should die more often." Hardest I've ever tried to keep a straight face. Story 15 was at my aunt's funeral. sis, and I at the coffin doing the whole stare at a dead body thing when she leans over and whispers behind us, I had to leave the funeral home. Story 16, I've told this before. But here it goes. I was in my freshman year of college when my mother died in the most unexpected and tragic way. When I was at her funeral, this old, kind of goofy cousin of hers was sitting behind me in church. He's a big guy, probably in his 60s, and I suspect he might not be operating at full capacity. If you know what I mean, I had met him only once before, so it's not like he's close to my family in any sort of way. But he's just an odd character, so he's sitting right behind me, and the choir starts singing. This dupe then thinks it's a great idea to start singing along, and I mean full-blown Pavarotti-type high-volume singing. No one else was now. This was so outrageously hilarious that I couldn't help it. I put my head down and started laughing uncontrollably. My sister next to me started comforting me because she thought I was crying. She puts her arm around me and rubs my arm while whispering it's okay. By this point, I was covering my face, hoping no one realized that I was laughing hysterically. The muffled sounds probably seemed like crying due to the context. But I was laughing, and my mother's funeral, that stupid moment, actually made that shitty day a little bit better. Edit, I accidentally a word. Story 17, I broke out laughing after my dad's funeral. He was about to be carried out of the church, and I leaned into my mom and said, "You remember the movie Fatso with James Coco? Would it be bad if the casket fell and Dad rolled out?" We both laughed as Dad liked the movie and found that scene quite funny. The priest looked at us, and we explained he had seen the movie and smiled. Story 18, at my grandmother's funeral. You know how they talk about the stages of mourning? Well, I'd already gone through the crying stage by the time the funeral rolled around. I just didn't feel that emotional at all. When there were speeches being made, I wasn't paying attention and my mind was drifting off elsewhere. I burst out laughing when I remembered a video I'd seen earlier that day. It was one quick burst, and then I tried my best to cover it up, stifling a few chuckles here and there. The person making a speech at the time noticed this, as well as a few people around me. He looks directly at me and into the microphone says, "How dare you?" It was probably the most embarrassing moment of my life. After the speech is finished, I had to leave just to avoid seeing the old man that called me out. Story 19, all right, so a couple years back, me and my family all decided to go see a movie together, and we settled on some new boxing movie with Sylvester Stallone. It didn't look good, but then again, I wasn't paying, so I might as well go. The movie was as boring as expected, but when we started getting up to leave, the theater darkens again. Some random logo pops up, so we sit down again, then some slow, almost sad-sounding song starts playing, along with a photo reel of two people. Some pictures only have a one. It's a guy and a girl, neither of which are attractive at all, at random places. Mostly in our shitty town. Due to the sad music and the 2006 Windows Movie Maker editing quality, my family and I sat laughing our collective asses off at what we figure is either an attempt to get back together or a shitty missing persons ad. Then, the music dies down and a "Will you marry me?" pops up on screen. Then the guy gets out of his chair and pulls out a ring about 2 or 3 rows directly below us. To top it all off, when I went to the bathroom after, I bumped into the guy and he gave me the dirtiest glare he could muster. All in all, it was a very awkward experience, set right after the least romantic movie you could think of, 1010 Would Do Again. Story 20, mentally challenged, broke into a rousing remix of Amazing Grace and Moving On Up in my best friend's funeral. We laughed so hard the ambulance was called because my other best friend had an asthma attack. I was working on a stroke ward, and we hoisted a lady over a bedpan, too. The ward was silent, but her was loud, almost as loud as her groan of relief when she let it all out. I couldn't handle it and had to leave. It was that part of a long day during a long week where you're starting to feel crazy. I was laughing so hard I was crying. Luckily for me, the patient had severe hemianopia and was registered deaf, so she didn't give a I was laughing because she didn't know. Another lucky stroke was that my educator at the time was a chilled out or relaxed fellow and gave me a telling off instead of failing me. M26 and noises and poo still made me laugh like schoolboy. Story 21, I have a macaw, and parrots don't normally like pooping where they sleep. So when we wake him up in the morning, the first thing he wants to do is go out to his perch to take a massive dump. One morning I carry him out there and put him on his perch. He's half awake and starts shuffling over to his usual spot. He then scares himself by bumping into a paper bag that he forgot was there, screams, awkwardly falls flaps to the ground, and then poops himself. Story 22, about a month ago, a medic got called to a guy that got hit by a car. He was hit so hard his pants came halfway off. He was obviously dead, but we had to hang around for the coroner. When he showed up, he rolled the guy on his belly to put the cadaver bag under him. I saw something on his and turned on my flashlight to see. Just as I figured out what it was, the coroner yells, "IT sure scared the out of him." My whole crew had to turn away, so the news crew couldn't record us laughing. I have an uncontrollable urge to laugh at the most inappropriate times. When I was in English class, the new kid sat next to me, and I asked if he was okay cause he seemed upset. He said my auntie died 2 weeks ago. I bursted into laughing, and I couldn't stop. I think not because of that, but it was just so random and unexpected as I was already in a great mood. Eventually, he started laughing because I was laughing. Then someone asked why we were laughing, and we said because his auntie died. We're good friends now. Story 23, my then-girlfriend gave a speech in the university student elections, which she lost badly in, and ended it with an Eminem lyric. She is as pale as a ghost, and it didn't fit her character even one bit. It wasn't even a good line. I couldn't help burst out laughing when she said it. Never gotten a more intense death stare in my life. Edit, since everyone is asking, it was the opening verse from Lose Yourself, ending with if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, in one moment would you capture it? Or just let it slip, I know I would capture it. A vote for me, make sure you got everything you ever wanted from university. Edit 2 for the people who are saying Eminem is white. Well, no, if you read the next few words you'd understand. I was only giving context to the situation. Story 24, a friend of mine started laughing uncontrollably during a moment of silence in memory of a dead guy. It was a school assembly about dangerous driving, and the speaker had killed his friend in a car accident. So he asked a moment of silence in memory of his friend, and then a picture of him was shown on the projector, and he had the biggest funny-looking mullet I've seen, and my friend lost it. He knew it was wrong and felt horrible, but he couldn't help it, and just laughed and laughed while everyone looked on him with very upset faces. Story 25, back when I was a hospital guard. A psych patient was brought in by the cops who looked exactly like one of the other two guys on my team. Same haircut and color, same mustache, same nose and bone structure. He was just a lot messy, because he was a very disturbed person. It was dumb, but it had been a slow day, and I found this to be really, really funny. We got called in to stand by in his seclusion room while the doctor interviewed him. The other dude was standing directly across from me. While the guy was being interviewed about extremely serious psychological and drug problems, my eyes kept darting between this guy and the other guard, and I just started giggling uncontrollably for like the 20 minutes of the interview. I kept having to pinch my leg to try and keep it in check, and kept failing. I'm pretty sure the guy thought I was laughing at either his schizophrenia or his heroin addiction at any given time. Obviously, the doctor and nursing staff were pissed. I'm surprised I was allowed to keep my job after that. Story 26, my husband's grandfather passed away, and we were at the funeral. My daughter was 4 at the time, and loves music. We rarely attend church, so she doesn't really understand the nuances and pauses in a service. When the music stopped, she stood up and enthusiastically started clapping and cheering. Everyone looked over at us horrified. My husband and I both busted out laughing. I just couldn't help it. Story 27, my brother and I got giggling and couldn't stop at the funeral showing after my stepdad died. Something about the casket having a freshness seal. What can I say? We use laughter to deal with grief. Story 28, Harry Potter 4 spoilers in the movie. When Harry comes back with Cedric's body, I busted out laughing because Neville had Potter written on his forehead. I don't know why that was so funny to me, but it was. Story 29, while trying to teach 2 elderly, nervous Japanese ladies English, and they have to make the sentence, I take my recycling to the dump from a collection of words, or add remove words I can't quite remember. I dump, I take my dump home. I had to bite myself several times to hold it together. Several years ago, I was brought along to a small gathering of strangers by a friend who didn't want to make an appearance on her own. The event was ostensibly being held as a casual get-together. After all, I wouldn't have attended otherwise, but less than half an hour after I'd been introduced to everyone, the overall atmosphere took a turn for much heavier territory. We had been discussing some forgettable topic or another and enjoying a few drinks, when the hostess all but jumped into the first moment of silence. So, my sister just had a miscarriage. The statement was uttered with absolutely no warning or transition from the subject at hand, as though it had been trying to force its way out of the woman's mind for some time. And needless to say, everyone seemed a little bit shocked by it. As soon as they recovered, though, each attendee immediately started offering their condolences, leaving me to feel like the odd man out in what was obviously a very sensitive situation. Given that I had only met most of the assembled people mere minutes prior, I figured that the best course of action was to make myself as unobtrusive as possible. So I sat back and pretended to be incredibly interested in my wine glass. It was then that I saw a young child come trundling into the living room with a collection of tiny stuffed animals clutched in her hands. At first, nobody paid much attention to the toddler's arrival. After a few seconds, though, she approached her mother and let loose with a string of whiny gibberish. The hostess seemed to understand what was being said, and responded with a dismissive tone not unlike one that I remembered from my own childhood. "Not right now. Honey," the woman whispered, Go play by yourself for a little while. The child didn't seem to like this answer, replying as she did with a scowl that hinted an oncoming tantrum. They'll come check on you soon, continued the hostess. Right now? Mommy is busy with her friends. Go play. The kid seemed ready to scream. She threw her stuffed toys down on the floor and stomped her foot, but a gentle push from her mother sent the girl away before anything worse could occur. The conversation amongst the adults immediately resumed, and I watched with widening eyes as the child snatched up one of her belongings, stormed off, and entered the doorway leading to the restroom. A few seconds later, I heard an ominous flushing noise. It didn't take much thought to figure out what had happened, and I quickly fought to suppress the grin that started working its way across my face. That proved to be incredibly different, however, when the toddler came back into the living room, selected another of her toys, then went through the entire routine again. By the time that I heard the second flushing sound, I was nearly overcome by giggling fits. And throughout the whole thing, the people around me were speaking in low tones about the most horrific loss that an expecting mother could endure. My friend eventually noticed my hysteria, and I hurriedly murmured an explanation as best I could through my poorly concealed snorts of laughter. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The young woman watched as the little girl returned for a third toy, her face still a mask of resentment, made her way back to the bathroom door, and disappeared. I fought to keep from bursting out into tears of merriment when still a third flush became audible. TLDR, a toddler's toilet-based tantrum during a discussion with strangers about miscarriage. Story 30. My grade 6 teacher was telling a story that involved a student themselves after falling asleep at their desk. I started laughing because I still wet the bed at the time and thought it was supposed to be funny. It was too late to stop once I realized nobody else thought it was funny. So I committed to it and just belted out laughter. Got kicked out of class, and a lecture saying how insensitive it was because there might be kids struggling with wetting the bed in our class. It was embarrassing. Story 31. My friend and I have this ongoing joke where we think it would be hilarious to have a game show where contestants are given empty Snapple jars and are told to fill it with tears however you can. When we want to see the last Harry Potter movie, spoiler alert, Snape dies pretty horribly. He's viciously attacked by a snake and left for dead. Harry then finds Snape, and as Snape's dying, he tells Harry to take his tears. Everyone else in the theater was crying, and we were doing our best to hold back a flood of hysterical laughter. Story 32. In early high school, we went on a field trip led by a teacher everyone strongly disliked. We were visiting a dairy farm as he lectured us on the realities of life on the farm. As he did so, he stepped right into a fresh cow flop, which went up and over his shoes, down into his socks, and made a squishing sound as he walked along. Red in the face, we all tried not to laugh, but being right behind him, I couldn't help but laugh when I heard the cow dung squishing with every step he took. I thought sure I was going to get into trouble, but somehow he let it pass without comment. Just a look that said it all. Story 33. A friend and I just got to a casino. We went to the bathroom first. Once done, both him and I walked past a couple of rows of slot machines. On the floor was an old woman with paramedics checking her. My friend yelled, "Oh, did she hit the jackpot?" I started laughing, and everyone and the paramedics gave us that "are you shitting me" face. Story 34. Class play. I'm a character giving a speech about how my best friend died. In the middle of it, I realized the premise is just so stupid that I cover my face and turn around. With my shoulders heaving from the laughter, it looked like I was really getting into the scene, but I was doing my best not to burst into loud laughter. Story 35. The following scenario was by far the strongest I have ever had to try in my life not to laugh. So I work the front desk at a hotel. A woman comes to check in and has her son with her, who is mentally disabled. He looks to be about 10 years old, but with an obviously lower than normal intellect and mental age. He has a stuffed horse with him that he is lovingly clutching when he walks in. He proceeds to quite calmly go over and obediently sit on the couch while his mother comes to the desk. I start to go about the process of checking her into the hotel, when suddenly the son calls for his mom's attention. He starts yelling, "Mom, look, look, look," in his underdeveloped manner of speaking. I just happen to, oh God, I should have kept my eyes down, look up to see that the boy has taken his stuffed horse and is making it hump the arm of the couch. This is pretty funny, but I'm an expert at this, and I maintain composure and keep moving along, checking her in. The mother has ignored him so far and has not noticed his stuffed horse doing the nasty with the furniture yet. It's at this point that he yells out, "Mom, look, he's doing what you told me not to do. He's doing it, Mom. What you told me not to do." Him absolutely breaking at the seams now. My mouth is twitching, trying so hard not to laugh. He continues, the stuffed horse now being made to hump that couch ever more furiously. "Mom, look, is he going to get in trouble? He's doing it, not me. He's doing that bad thing. Remember, that thing you told me not to do?" I snapped. I could no longer hold it in, and I just burst out laughing uncontrollably. His mother had actually not yet turned around to acknowledge what he was trying to show her. So, as of yet, had no idea. When I finally burst out laughing, she turned and was obviously horrified. She turned back to me with a face as bright red as a fire engine, and hurriedly got her room's keys and ushered him away as swiftly as possible. All while the son is still asking her if the stuffed horse is going to get in trouble like he did. I felt so bad for laughing and for her embarrassment, but that was just too much. Story 36, I laugh every time someone gets hurt. It doesn't matter who falls, if they're injured, or how serious it is. My first reaction is uncontrollable laughter. Then, once I get it under control, anytime I think about it again and replay in my head, I laugh again. Story 37, I up Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Every year our family reads a poem before sitting down to eat, and last year was my first time. The two last lines of the poem go something like, as we sit down to feast away, we'll always be grateful for this Thanksgiving day. I decided to replace the last line with, as we sit down to feast away, we'll always be grateful that Stuart, my brother, is gay. I've never seen such a look of disappointment on my mom's face. I very quickly realized how stupid I sounded. So I sat down, put my head on the table, and apologized for being a moron. Surprisingly, they let me read again this year. Story 38, in the Indian culture, when the girl gets married, usually after the religious stuff and the reception is over, the girl goes back to her family's house, and they send her off to the new family in an emotional scene. Everyone is crying, hugging, sending well wishes. This cousin of mine wasn't really popular among the cousins, and while she was being sent off in the car, the brothers push away the car from the driveway. One of my cousins said, "Get thee out of Birmingham." I could not stop laughing for the life of me. I know when she looks back at the wedding video, she's going to be pissed off. Story 39, in basic training, we had a locker inspection, and apparently no one could fold their duffel bags. The TI just kept getting angrier and angrier, until he kicked everyone out of the bays and into the day room with only the squad leaders left behind. He just kept yelling, and we heard crashing sounds of the beds being launched around. I was too curious, so I sneaked into the hall and poked my head around the corner as he's throwing a bed against a locker. I start giggling. He looks up right at me. Things went downhill after that. TLDR, I lack military bearing. Story 40, I can't believe I didn't think about this until just now, but 2 days ago I was at an outdoor concert, and I went early to ensure I got the best spot. I'm standing there at the barricade, and a staff worker proceeded to trip, drop her coffee, drop her caseless iPhone screen first, with both her and her phone landing in the coffee which she spilled. She got up and started walking away, while wiping off her phone to make sure it was okay, completely blind to the fact there was a ledge in front of her. She fell again, and I couldn't hold in the laughter. I'm positive she heard me. Story 41, my English teacher was telling a story about some guy that had accomplished so much, and then he ended the story with, and then he got brain cancer and died. I got detention for that one. Story 42, my great-grandmother's funeral. I was a pallbearer. After he set the casket down, and before it was lowered into the ground, we took off her white gloves and laid them on the casket. I still don't know how it happened, but both of my gloves had the middle finger sticking up. My cousin saw it first and started cracking up. Within seconds, about 14 of the guests lost it. The rest gave us dirty looks as the casket was slowly lowered into the ground, giving us all a final U. Story 43, at my grandfather's funeral. I am sitting in the front row with my 5-year-old son. My son lets out this hellacious. It echoed off the walls and was super loud. It also smelled like he had also died, so I'm sitting there trying to hold my laughter in, and he does it again. I had to leave while my father was giving a eulogy about something probably completely fabricated. We get out there, and my grandmother follows us out. I'm thinking, oh, she goes, man, it was loud. Then we all walked across the street to Dairy Queen and ate ice cream until my father found us and threw a fit. The end. Story 44, I met an old neighbor while out shopping one day who I hadn't seen in maybe 5 or so years. In usual neighborly convo, I asked her how she and her family had been doing. She told me something about her husband, and I drifted off and forgot to listen. I caught the tail end of been Lori, so I politely laughed and agreed yes. The awkward stare she gave me made me realize this was not the reaction she expected. I apologized, saying sorry. I misheard you. What did you say? Turns out their beloved family dog of 14 years lost a battle with the bin Lori. Story 45, okay. For some weird reason, my brother and I could not stop laughing when we had to go pick out the casket for our mother's funeral. In all fairness, my brother started it. Our other older brother and sister were with us, and they kept looking at us too, like behave. The funeral director was this tall, pale, skinny guy in an ill-fitting suit, the pants of which were a good 2 inches too short. He was acting way too schmaltzy and speaking in dulcet tones. He took us into this room, sat down at his desk, and there was a light switch behind him with a red light. My brother and I looked at the light switch, and then at each other. Well, that made us both start giggling. and that pissed off our older sister. Then the director guy pressed the light switch, and I swear a door panel opened up into this huge room, the size of a gym, full of caskets. This totally set us off. We tried to one-up each other every minute or two. We walked past a bronze casket, and my brother said, "Do you have any gold caskets? Our mother liked gold." I interrupted and said, "When Mom had her colors done, they said she was a winter. That means she could be buried only in silver tones." As we walked past an especially hideous pink casket, I blurted out, "She'd die if we buried her in that." Our older sister and brother, who were acting all were so mature, fell out laughing, and my sister said, "She's already dead." Then we laughed again, really loud and snorty, and the funeral director looked nervous as, geez, it made me wonder if no one had ever laughed there before. I don't remember what casket we finally picked out, but Mom didn't clash with it, whatever it was. Oh, in case you're wondering, we love Mom like crazy. She laughed at weird occasions all the time with us. It was sort of poetic that we'd laugh like that when she died. Story 46, bit of backstory. I play pen and paper RPGs. I have a thing for feelies or physical documents and objects that represent the game in the real world. One of these for a one-shot horror game was a list of inmates at an asylum I ran out of imagination halfway through and began just writing down the first word that came to my head. Thus the creation of the venerable Beep Feep, Teenage Deviant. I have no idea why, but just thinking of that name gives me the giggles. I'm giggling now. Anyway, several months later, I'm on the subway when the name of Beep Feep wanders past my conscious thought for no reason. I immediately start giggling, but I try to control it, which didn't work at all, and try all my tricks here, punching myself in the leg, biting my bottom lip, but none of it is working. I'm still laughing like an idiot because Beep Feep is somehow incorrigibly hilarious to me. This is when I realize that I'm staring at someone, specifically at a very surly-looking Indian guy sitting across from me. For the last 5 minutes, I've been maintaining unknowing eye contact with this man while laughing and hitting myself. He is getting increasingly visibly angry, which my already demented brain parses as being extra hilarious, resulting in a downward spiral of laughter hitting her. He eventually stomps off the train in a huff, and I just lose it. I am dying. I don't miss my stop, but it's close. And now somewhere in the city, there's a guy with a story of being accosted by a self-abusive maniac on the Blur Danforth line. Story 47, an acquaintance of mine attempted suicide in my freshman year of high school. I opted to cope with it by bursting out into full-blown laughter when explaining the situation to my parents. Yeah. Story 48, in my sophomore year of high school. One of my friends was hit by a car and died. A couple days later, they had a sort of tribute to him during announcements. They played his favorite song, which happened to be Don't Stop Believing by Journey. The whole situation was something out of a God sitcom. I had to pretend I was crying instead of chucking. Story 49, my brother and I were playing Halo 3, and he gets pretty angry, so he gets killed off spawn, and that is it. He lost it, grabbed my controller, and chucked it hard as he could, which I hate, because he breaks my goddamn controllers. Well, this time my controller would not go quietly into the night. It hit the side bed, which was about 1.5 feet away from, and ricocheted back at him and popped him in the jaw. Now he was filled with a vengeful anger, and basically just threw a controller at his own jaw full force. It is honestly the funniest thing I've ever seen, but for some reason he did not find the situation as funny. Well, moral of the story, don't throw my controllers. Story 50, mine isn't that bad, but I saw Brokeback Mountain in theaters, and I could not stop laughing. It was just so cheesy. When he spits on his hand for lube, I really lost mine and left the theater for a while, because people were getting angry at me. I'm actually laughing again sitting here, thinking about when he says, "I wish I could quit you." I mean, holy, it may be the corniest movie I've ever seen. Story 51-1, my deaf teacher made a meow sound when he signed. 2, we were camping, and a skunk decided to join us and eat popcorn under my chair while I sat in it. It didn't spray me, but it did touch me. Story 52, my best friend in college was not out to his family. He passed away suddenly only months after graduation. At the burial, the machine that lowers the coffin into the ground malfunctioned, causing the casket to become crooked. One of the men operating the machine jumped onto the grave to fix it. Being the smart I turned to my boyfriend and said, "Man, he couldn't even go into the grave straight, but he did love a man on top of him." Could not keep from laughing. Story 53, my mom's last breath. She was surrounded by family, including my sister and I. Both of us are terrible at laughing at inappropriate moments. We had all heard what we thought was her last breath. It was super intense. People were crying. Then after the perfect amount of comedic spacing, she took another final breath. The two of us busted up. I'm not proud, but my mom would understand.